Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Um, we've heard so much about the involvement of the special economic zones in Nigeria since we came in the morning. I thought I had to do some historical overview of SEZs globally, but because of time constraint, I will not go into that again. But rather, I would just like to do some sort of recap of the presentation of the paper by the speaker. I just left the podium to highlight a few of the key points that I took down. First is the need for skills development, reskilling, and upskilling, including technological transfer. He also elaborated on the need for collaboration, cooperation, and partnership, the need to promote services sector in the SEZs in addition to manufacturing that is currently ongoing, the need to promote circular economy in SEZs, and also he emphasized the importance of local sourcing of raw materials, particularly making use of agro-commodities, that is value addition. He made mention of innovative approaches to building the required infrastructure in the SEZs, and he emphasized the need for associations to complement the authorities to market the SEZs, and made mention of policy review, need to advocate for this, and also emphasized the importance of the SEZs in the AFCFTA, particularly with the SEZs in the AFCFTA. He made mention of the need to establish border and cross-border SEZs, and then the need to collaborate, to encourage bilateral SEZ cooperation. He also made mention of key policy areas that are very, very important. These include the need to institutionalize ease of doing business, the need to digitalize government and commercial businesses, the need to strengthen legal and policy framework of SEZs and make SEZs more attractive. He emphasized the need for SEZs to be mainstreamed into broader national plans, and they need to encourage new sectors such as the digital and creative industries. And finally, that there's a need to adopt effective monetary and fiscal policies to facilitate SEZs development. Having laid this basis, we will now go into asking the panelists to give us their perspective on this topic. And I'll begin with Mr. Agboluade. Did I pronounce your name well, sir?
Yeah, that's good.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
At the beginning, in the morning, the MD of NEBSA spoke glowingly about you.
Oh, thank you.
It does appear you have good understanding of the workings of the SEZs in Nigeria and how they have evolved. We would like you to kindly tell us this afternoon what policies have worked for SEZs involvement in Nigeria. What do you think has worked that we should sustain and intensify going forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to this session. I must first congratulate the two MDs, Ogebza and Nebza. This is what you're doing today, or will be doing the last 2 years. I wish we've been doing that in the last 20 years. From the beginning, there's always this issue of conflict. We lost over 10 or 15 years over institutional conflict between one agency and the other, and lack of understanding of the policy itself. From experience, and having lived in China for about 3 years after my term as the MD NEBSA, how I would love that we adopt the lead lecturer paper, which also should form the basis of our discussion, so that we do not digress and miss the point most of it he has raised. The problem with the program in Nigeria, we have not achieved as much as we need to have achieved. I was the MD for over a period about 8 to 10 years while in the office. I would have loved to describe those periods as the most turbulent, at the same time progressive, because we did not achieve any progress without a fight, whether with one institution or with one minister. Our minister used to be our minister for a period of about 4 or 5 months before, from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. From the day he joined as the minister, he joined also in the fight. And the Minister of Justice also that was there, he was also with us. The bane of the problem in lack of progress is lack of discipline. Institutional discipline in agencies that are relating with the free zone. But in the last 4 or 5 years, this dramatically changed. If we have had this at the beginning of the free zone operation in Nigeria, we'll have made more progress than now. But I hope this we're doing also is sustained. And the problem I saw in that is individual interpretation of laws. Our laws, though, were passed or signed, but they were not institutionalized. Most of the provisions of the law are left to the discretion of individual. If this CG see it differently, the whole of the department see it also that same way. If the CG comes and see it more positively, the whole of the department also see it that way. This quarrel went on for many, many years. Instead of facing the real issue, we were fighting how one institution will respect the laws, how the other one will accommodate the laws. And this is not helpful to the growth of the free zone scheme. This is not where we should be. We should have gone far, far, far from this. From the lead topic discussant, he made about, I have issues which are presented in the PowerPoint. There are very many, similar to what the lecturer has said, but I will not bother you with that. I will take issues, how do we move away from here? I wish the organizers have invited the political parties who are contesting for election in 2023. Because if we're not careful, we're going by the full cycle. If today the people who are going to lead us come next year do not understand what we are talking about, all this effort we have made in the last 30 years, maybe we are likely to have more problems. If, unfortunately, we have leaders in the next year who do not understand what we're talking about here, it now becomes a challenge to the free zones management, both of GEBZA and NEBZA, to sit down with these people. Whoever becomes president in the next year, let them understand. Actually, how would I have thought they will be here for us to understand what we're talking about. Everybody has been campaigning and dancing on the rostrum, but that's not what we need in 2023. We need somebody to really understand where are we going as a nation. We have not made progress. All of us here in this room, look at yourself. Which of the items you are wearing is made in Nigeria? Whether it's your shoe, it's your glasses, it's your cap, it's your wristwatch, virtually everything we consume, we are importing. And our strength in growth, in economic development, I was the Minister of Commerce also for many years. So I knew the policy trend, I knew the implementation, and what the end result. We need to use our consumption for our growth. That's that simple economic revolution, industrialization we need to achieve. Use our consumption for our productivity and industrialization. Until we adopt that as a policy, as a national economic policy, as an action plan policy, as a growth policy, we will still come back here another 5 years, we'll still be talking about what have we done wrong. Mr. Chairman, moderator, without taking too much of your time, all the issues that were listed earlier on remains the real core that why it's making us not to move forward. And I don't know how we go about this. My appeal to the management of NEBZA and OGBZA try and engage the people who are campaigning about and dancing at the stadium, that they need to understand the economic input of what lies ahead of us. The next 4 years, if we're not careful, will be more difficult than what we had in the last 20 years.
Thank you, Mr. Agua.
So that's my consumption for our productivity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll still come back to you.
Yes, sir.
But we'd like to move on to Mr. Emeka Ene. As a player, what do you think, in addition to what has been said so far by the speakers, could be more helpful to the development of SEZs in Nigeria? You know what the shoe pinches. Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to the lead presenter. It was an excellent presentation. I've always wondered why we don't pronounce SEZ. We pronounce NEPZA, NEPZA. We pronounce OGZA. We pronounce NEZA. So how come we don't pronounce SEZ as in, maybe because it sounds like something else? Well, yeah, somebody laughed there, so I know what the person was thinking. I have a few slides to share just to again examine whether we're actually pronouncing what we read properly. You know, there are two benefits. I mean, and the thing is, when we shine our eye, we need to just essentially understand why we are all here pushing the impact of SEZs or free trade zones, as it were. You know, whether they are static economic benefits or whether they are dynamic economic benefits. Bottom line is people are being employed, and in another case, there's some level of technology transfer and an increase in the well-being to the people. Ultimately, the value addition of free zones and special economic zones should not be in doubt. The question is, how come that message has not been shared? So, the lead presenter made some allusions to progress that's been made across the world. So I have 3 case studies. But ignore the write-up on the left and look at the picture on the right and say, Haba. Shenzhen was a fishing village 30 years ago. Shenzhen today has the highest concentration of flyovers in the world. What made the difference? Special economic zones. Of course, Dubai is another classic example. Dubai was a desert in 1990 here. Look at the same place. That picture is the exact same place taken in 2020. And we look at the difference. What made the difference was, again, the impact of a special economic zone regime that attracted foreign direct investment. One free zone in Dubai delivers more like almost a quarter of their GDP and a quarter of their foreign direct investment, just one free zone. Okay, we go to a small country like Dominican Republic. It's a small, with due respect, backwater country. But that small country delivers huge value addition just using the special economic zone regime. And we now ask ourselves, what made all these things work? This is a slide I borrowed from the World Bank records, their report. The top section shows the power outages, or time to clear goods. And you can see that on the left you have African free zones, and on the right you have non-African free zones, let me put it that way, right? And you can see there's a difference. The amount of time it takes to clear things through customs or the amount of power outage is significantly higher. Therefore, doing business is just tough. It's a difficult deal. It's a big deal. So what did these guys do right? I mean, essentially, they had support from the government. We have that. They attracted not just FDI, but they attracted diaspora FDI. In other words, what the lead presenter was talking about, that it's time for us to begin to look within the neighborhood for foreign direct investment that comes from people who really want to invest. They have strong links to the domestic economy, both in terms of value addition, in terms of feed input and co. And of course, there are location advantages. Now, were there gaps? Of course, there are gaps. We have a situation which my brother Shino has already talked about. You know, the fact that we have disconnects between our regulators, complete disconnects, where you have to keep reinventing the wheel, where you have a challenge with when you leave NEBSA and go back to the state, if you're located in the state, and you have to deal with the state governments, then the local governments, and of course, all of these different agencies, each one giving you a different set of rules. So in terms of pointing the way on how we can move forward, in terms of making this thing work, we have to promote realistic schemes. What I mean by realistic schemes is something that points from A to B. There's an investor who wants to do something, is going to employ some people. Let us work together, and the one-stop shop system works. Project by project, the way NEBSA is approaching things head on. In other words, if we have these challenges and they become roadblocks, how do we partner together, all the agencies partner together to make that project work? It is important that we begin to see things from a pragmatic point of view. In other words, if between today and next year, there must be some progress, zone by zone, what are the issues, and let's unbundle those issues to make things work. We have to create better linkages to the local economy in such a way that we can develop these things. And of course, the future lies with the African Free Trade Area, AFTA. At least I can pronounce that one well. You know, virtual free zones as talked by our lead presenter, you know, but also creating standards, the safe zones, green zones, all of these things are critical if we're going to succeed and solve the problems that we have. Doing business is tough, and anybody in this area knows what I'm talking about. It is tough. It can be really, really tough to do business. But if we put our heads together to solve these problems one by one, we begin to deliver this value. You know.
Mr.
I'm done. This is my exact last slide.
Thank you.
When a bird is used to crawling, you know, it assumes that flying is a crime. We can fly. We can truly fly. Many times our limitations are internal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Now we'll move on to Mr. Obegolu. At the opening in the morning, the MD NEBSA made mention of SEZs, dispute resolution centers, OGSA looking in the direction of establishing a zone, NEBSA trying to establish a zone, and he was advocating for a national one. What would be your view on this?
Okay, thank you. Again, I join the panel in commending the organizers of this conference. Prince Kayode, when he spoke about making these SEZs attractive to investors. And one of the indices of ease of doing business is dispute resolution. How do investors resolve their disputes? You recall that early this year, the dispute between Samsung and Ladol, which had dragged for over 5 years, was resolved upon the intervention of the Dispute Resolution Center set up by NEBSA. Now, how did we come about this? When Professor Adeshuba became the MD of NEBSA, the Nigerian Chambers of Commerce Dispute Resolution Center met with him, and he toyed with the idea of setting up a customized model dispute resolution center for special economic zones. And we worked with NEBSA to set up what we have today as the NEBSA ADR unit. Now, what that unit intends to do is to promote efficient and effective dispute resolution for businesses within these special economic zones. Now, commercial disputes are inevitable. when we have over 50 industries within special economic zones, employing thousands of Nigerians and doing business amongst themselves and, of course, with other parties. What we need to do to support ease of doing business within the special zones is to improve on what is already on ground. Now, the biggest room in life is the room for improvement. We have the NEBZA Dispute Resolution Center. Now, for OFSA, what I would advise is to come together, sit down with the stakeholders, the industry practitioners, to design what works for them. We cannot be asking to attract FDI and at the same time giving out our dispute resolution to industries outside Nigeria. Now, I'll give you an example. Whether we like it or not, today, most of these industries in their commercial contracts provide for dispute resolution either in London or in Paris. So we're asking these industries to bring in FDI, while at the same time, because we do not have effective and efficient model dispute resolution for these industries, they are contracting it to centers outside Nigeria. And of course, we all know what that means. That means we are taking our money outside the country. So let us not create more centers. We need a national center for special economic zones that will be a product of an intensive engagement with stakeholders to design what works for them so that disputes will be resolved within the system, because whether we agree or not, litigation is not an option for commercial disputes. So my advice is that we go back to improve on what is on ground, work with both zone authorities to develop what works for special economic zones. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so very much. Thank you. We move to my colleague Bibi. She heads the Indo ITPO's Investment and Technology Promotion Office, and we would like her to tell us how ITPO has positioned itself to support SEZ development and sustainability in Nigeria with respect to investment promotion and technology transfer. That is, what does the ITPO have to offer?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be seated here to talk about what UNIDO Investment and Technology Promotion Office has to offer. Our view is not just limited to Nigeria, but currently we're working in Nigeria through counterpart funding with the government to support the African Industrialization Agenda, which is the AU 2063. It's on this premise that the AFCFTA was pretty much signed into and ratified by most member states, and we now have, an area of free trade across Africa, and it's one of the biggest opportunities. For ITPO Nigeria, we want to work with government as well as the private sector to continue to see how we can get investments into SEZs. But before getting investments into SEZs, you have to look at what exactly is the SEZ doing and what is the premise for even developing an area into an SEZ. In the recent, or in the past, let me put it this way, we have seen SEZs being located in areas across Nigeria based on geopolitical positioning. And one of the things that we are hoping to see as ITPO is to get more SEZs developed that will be looking at it from an economic perspective. I'm happy to see that happening in our conversations and dealings with NEBZA. We have seen that there's a more strategic focus on SEZ development. We're looking at it from how exactly can we pragmatically help the economy through SEZs, not just because we need to see what other countries are doing and do the same thing, but to actually look at where is our economy heading towards, what is the trend, what dividends do we have in terms of youth, capacity, and where is the demand? Because for you to have an economic zone, you need to be trading value for value. So it's a zone where, for me, even though Mr. Ene was talking about the pronunciation of SEZs, I would add to that to say that I see it more as a solutions and excellence zone, because this is where we should actually come together, sit down and say, what is the solution required to deliver the economy? What is the solution required to improve FDI? How do we attract more FDI? How do we diversify the economy? How do we create more jobs? When we're looking at it from this perspective, we look at it as UNIDO under what we refer to as SDG lensing. Is it checking all the boxes for the SDGs? As in, are we creating jobs? Are we creating value? Is there inclusiveness in what we're doing? And looking at the examples also showcased, we see how SEZs have taken countries from primitive solutions and primitive approaches to economic advancement into world-class cities and centers, as seen in China, as seen in Dubai, as seen even in Ethiopia here in Africa. And we are saying this is possible in Nigeria. We need to leverage the opportunities we have. AFCFTA is a big opportunity. How do we begin to drive efforts and political will? How do we influence policies? How do we ensure policy is implemented to deliver on trade facilitation, on industrial integration? How do we look at SEZs from the perspective of creating opportunities for global value chains? We have other SEZs, and I'm happy that the AZO team are here as well. The bilateral integration between one SEZ and the other, what exactly is their output product? How do we use that as probably add value to that product and bring it, either export it or utilize it locally? So for ITPO, Investment and Technology Promotion Office, we're looking at all these things, looking at how do we embrace technology so that we also get technology-driven solutions to become a part of what the SEZs are doing. So that it's not just brick and mortar SEZs, but also the digital and virtual SEZs, where we're focused on services, because services is also going to be a big part of the gains of the AFCFTA. We have Europe to leverage, and when the EU was created, there are so many things that I always say are inevitable that would have to happen in Africa. So in as much as we do not need to copy exactly what they have done, we have a lot of examples that we can adapt to help to bring our own economy to where it needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Bibi. We come back to you for the last time. Because of time constraint, we just give each panelist a minute to give us a policy recommendation. We've heard so much about challenges in the areas of policy, infrastructure, political will, insecurity, and so forth. And I listened keenly to the MD of NEBSA in the morning when he was presenting his address. He particularly talked about the incursion of government agencies into the free trade zones, and how this needs to stop. There was a discussion also around separation between operation and regulation in the SEZs, issue of offshore banking regime that needs to take effect in the SEZs. Then we've spoken about dispute resolution already, and the DG of NEBSA made mention of e-NEBSA that should start working from January 2023, and the development of 25 megawatts of power in Kano and Calabar. So with all these challenges and what they are put forth to do in the SEZs, could you kindly just tell us one policy recommendation that you think you can provide to help the involvement of SEZ going forward in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you. I have some points I've listed here in the PowerPoint. I hope it will show about 12 points of them all. It's all like what we've all had before. Inclusion of the free zone regulation as a national policy. And that also has the political element of who is leading us. If the leader of the country takes it as a part of the target point for which is going to run the economy, I'll go to way forward. It's all listed there. It's all the issues that we've already said earlier on. It's about 1 to 12. Okay, this they said. These are some of them. These are the way forward. It must be taken as a serious matter. I want to think that the council should be able to receive the MD of OGEBZA and NEBZA almost on a weekly basis to tell what direction are we going. What have you achieved in the last 1 month? What have you achieved in the last 3 months? It should be on a regular basis, not to establish this authority and leave them to their own devices. The government also must be seen, and everybody also within the country will see that this is what I'm facing on. As of today, there's no particular industrial policy that is sustainable and that has stayed these 30 years since we started working on this project. Many industrial policies have come and have gone. The one that's still remaining and is still being implemented and being used is this free zone policy. We need to take it as a national policy and need to be driven by whoever is the head of state, not even the Minister of Commerce. That's to be his own presidential policy. That's the way to succeed. If everything we consume in the country passes through the free zone, we will have a change within 1 year of governance. There will be a practical change in the whole of the economy and delivery for industrialization.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Obegolu.
Yes, let me use the Samsung and Lador case to show us the urgency of dispute resolution. Now, in that case, it dragged for about 10 years, but in 5 years preceding the resolution of that case, for the 3 years before the resolution, there was no activity going on within that space. 10,000 people lost their jobs. Nigerians lost their jobs. It was upon the intervention of the Dispute Resolution Center of NEBZA that both parties came back together. And guess what the government of CO said upon resolution? That this resolution will bring back South Korean companies into the Free Zones Authority. So for me, dispute resolution is as urgent as the need to drive this process forward. We need to sit down with the stakeholders to improve on what is on ground and get stakeholders buy-in so I can design a model dispute resolution process for the special economic zones. Thank you.
Thank you. Saine?
Yeah, I think one of the very critical things that would help improve efficiency is to embrace technology. And I think it was very welcome, I would say, announcement by the MD of NEBZA about e-NEBZA. And I think the obvious extension of that is that free zones that are leading the way into cross-border e-commerce zones, cross-border trade, will plug into that straight away and allow us to be a bit more efficient in solving the problems that currently beset us. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, we listen to Bibi, and particularly we would like her to tell us Nigeria needs to increase focus on green and digital SEZs. So what policy actions will you propose to boost MSME's participation in the SEZs?
Okay, so for the SEZs, we
1
see,
minute, please.
1 minute, yes. We see that, I mean, the trend is, we're going digital and we're going green. SEZs have a big opportunity here, where with the green special economic zone, such as the one recently done in Kaduna, We're looking to see how we can push more SEZs in the solution space of waste management, pollution control. We're also looking at resource efficiency. I had a discussion with Professor Adeshugba yesterday, looking to do a resource efficiency for all SEZs to see what we can do right in terms of greening the economy so that SEZs are also contributing to carbon emission reductions as well as industrial decarbonization. These are all opportunity areas for SMEs because we have very young, smart women, youth that are looking in this area, thankfully, to the clean tech ecosystem that is also taking very big roots in Nigeria, and we see this as a big area of opportunity: SEZs, clean tech, green economy, and the green SEZ. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists.
Sorry, Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
your point of information. The lead speaker did mention our delay in signing the AFTA. One of the major reasons why Nigeria did not sign AFTA, because I was part of it also, was that they excluded free zone as an origin. They excluded product from the free zone as originating from Nigeria or from this free zone location where it is cited. That clause was not there. If that clause was not included and we signed the AFTA, none of the product from any of the free zones can enter AFTA. Nigeria insisted that that must be included, and there's a gentleman there, Mr. Audu. Mr. Audu was there from the director from the ministry. He's one of the lead fighter on the issue to ensure that that was included and to protect future development of free zones, productivity and material must go into AFTA as stipulated. Initially, it was never included. But thanks to the minister and Director Audu, this was done, and it was virtually signed.
Thank you so much for the information. Thank you for your attention. We will articulate our points and pass to the rapporteurs. Thank you. Thank you from us on this side.
Thank you very much. I'd like that we give them a very resounding applause, especially for the lecturer and the panel of discussants. Thank you so very much.